All right. We are live. Woohoo.
All right, so we're just going to wait for a couple of minutes to allow people to join us. Um, so before we, oops, before we start today's topic for Joy in the Morning, podcast by Felicia Roberts. Topic for Joy in the Morning. Hold on. Okay, so we'll give it a couple of minutes. I got an eye on our chat to see who's joining. Okay. And then we'll give it about 2 minutes, and then we'll just go ahead and jump right in and allow people time to join.
Sounds good.
Okay. Got our special guest here today, Brenda Gray, all the way from Apple Valley, California. She's got a lot of great knowledge and wisdom that she's going to share with us tonight on her personal experience of how she overcame how she was able to endure the process of finding joy in the morning while overcoming the passing of our mother, Gwendolyn Hudson, and our father, Ozell Hudson. And at such a young age. Hello, Sean, and thank you for joining us. So we'll go ahead and Felicia, give you a chance to pop in, show everybody your face. What's unique about this podcast is all three of us share a common experience. However, it was at three different, we were all, our ages. There was a span in between the ages, and each one of us had our own, personal experience. And then with that, we'll go ahead and share how that impacted us to where we are today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to Felicia.
Well, thank you so much. And again, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you joined the tonight. We're just doing some dry runs, see how it goes, and we may change some things around, but for now, this is what it is. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Joy in the Morning, please be sure to subscribe and share with some people if you know some people that this would help. And so today, again, as Tricia said, our great host, we are going to be talking about kind of dealing with the loss of a parent and the mourning and the grief process through that. And again, getting some feedback from our special guest. Just really quick, none of us are specialists. We all really just want to have some candid and transparent conversation in hopes that if there's someone out there that is struggling in any area, that maybe you can find some words of encouragement or some tools to help you through the process. So with that, I'd want to introduce Brenda Gray. Again, she's my beautiful aunt, very supportive family. So I'm thankful for you being here. Hello from Apple Valley, California.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited about this topic.
We're excited to have you. So we're just going to jump right in because we started a little bit late and sometimes it's just that way. This is a serious topic, but I think just preempting it, looking at us all, looking at us both, we're in good spirits, you would say, right? So we are going to talk about a pretty heavy content, but we hope that you'll find some joy in it. So my first question is, how old were you when your mother was called home, and how did that impact you?
Well, I had just turned 16 years old.
Wow.
I turned 16 on the 5th of August, and my mother passed on the 27th of August. And
Mm,
so, as a teenager, I was just coming into that part of life, at
mhm.
knowing how to be a teenager, but at the same time, having to take on some adult responsibilities because my mother was sick during
Mhm.
that time. So it's like teenage time, that's thrown out the window. It's time for you to adult up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at that particular time, because I was still, like I said, in a teenage state, 16 years old, I was dealing with learning just who I was as a person, as
Wow.
most teenagers do,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? So, and then with me having 3 younger siblings underneath me, Patricia and I really close in age, 11 months apart, but Donna and Ann much younger, I immediately went into mothering mode.
Okay.
So, really
Would you?
dealing with that grief, you know, it was it wasn't there yet.
Okay, that is fair. So when you say it wasn't there yet, do you think that at 16, to your point, not really understanding who you were as a person, did you understand that there was grief coming and maybe you were in it at a point, or were you just like, heads down, let's move. I've got to do what I've got to do and I'll deal with it later.
And that's pretty much where I was at because just to kind of go back a little bit, while my mother was she was sick, I prayed, prayed, prayed that she would be healed.
Hmm.
But I'd seen where it was going and the pain and suffering she was in. So I did a very adult thing and I prayed, Father, take her today. I
Mm,
prayed
okay.
that he would take her to put her out of her pain. So
Okay.
I think I was dealing with the grieving process even while she was still living. I
Wow.
didn't know the magnitude of the loss that I would experience because I had never lost a parent. I had never
Mm,
lost anyone close to me to death. So I didn't know what that was going to look like or be like or feel like. But I did know I wanted the person that I loved to be out of pain. And that was the
nor
only
could
way
you.
I could see it happening.
Right, and nor could you at that moment, right? At 16, why would you think about the loss of a parent? To your point, it's something that you don't really have at the forefront of your mind. But you said something that just really stuck out to me, is that I did a very adult thing, and I prayed for him to take her today. And what that says to me is, yes, it was an adult decision, but it was something that came from your spirit. You knew that the healing was here or it was there. Like the final healing was one place, one way or another. So would you
Right.
say that because you had that truth in you, that it was like second nature to say, okay, heal her, but I understand if you can take her today because she's in pain.
Right. And so that's the thing. That's something that was instilled in me very early on. I had from a young child an awareness of the Father and that there was more than just religion or going to church or something. I didn't know at the time what it was. Now I
Hmm.
do, but that was always there from a young child as far back as I can remember. So with that, like I said, saying take her so that I knew that she would be out of pain. but I knew that she would be safe. She would be with the Father. She would be loved. She would be healed. She would be in the best place possible, other than, me want her to be here with me and the rest of us. Yeah. But it's like, no, when you love someone that deeply, you put them before yourself, even at the expense of you're going to feel pain, you're going to feel grief, you're going to feel loss, but that person is at peace and they're whole and they're at rest. So
Can
That-
I interrupt quick?
Absolutely.
Because of course, those of you who are joining in, I'm kind of behind the scenes, but I'm part of this
Not really.
conversation. Yeah. So Brenda and I are 11 months apart. And so I had just turned 15, right? And when she passed away. And so you figure back in the 70s, during that time, at least as much as I could remember, death wasn't a thing that you spoke about.
Right.
And so the emotion, at 15, being told not to cry, and there was this strength that was projected on us that we really didn't have the ability to carry, right? But we were told, and as we were told, so we did. And so for myself, I recall Brenda and I talking about it. Like, we didn't know what the magnitude of death, what that looked like, because we were actually in the room. I don't know if you recall this, Brenda, when you and I were in the room and we had the conversation, like, what if Mama was to die? How would you respond? And, we cried. It was like, oh, we would cry like this, but that very day that we were actually acting, dramatizing what could potentially happen, it actually happened that day. And we still didn't really understand, first of all, 1979, you are a Black family, and I'm just recalling what I seen looking out the door, and I'm going, ooh, Brenda, there's a white man in our house with a white coat on. And we were like, ooh, so I personally didn't even clearly understand what was going on, but I knew deep in my heart that it wasn't a good thing. And so for me, it took me years to process that, way until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
Because I didn't know what to do with that emotion. I didn't know where to channel that, because there was no direction, there was no instruction. You just move on.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So that's I'm going to ask a question on that. 30 years, you said, took you to in your 30s. So maybe what, 14, 15 years to get
Right.
to get through, at least to some place, some semblance of, okay, I can now figure out what to do with these feelings. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit so I can ask you a question. When you got to the passing of your father, after going through that, was it easier or a little different to go through that?
It was able to watch and be a part of his transition. Whereas with our mother, for myself, everything was hush hush. And if I were to tell what happened was my mother said she wanted to have a family reunion. We went to Mount Pleasant, Texas. We had a reunion. She looked like she was pregnant. I thought she was going to have another baby. We were excited. This is what happened. And then when she gets home, she goes to the doctor, and that's the last thing I knew. The next thing I knew, mama was sick. I don't even know if the word cancer was mentioned, or I just did not even know what that meant at that time. But all I knew was she was sick. With daddy, it was a little bit different because we were hands-on, a little bit more hands-on, and we were a part of the process. So did that answer your question? It was a little bit easier, but it was still hard.
And can I add something real quick to what Patricia was saying? Like she said, it's something how each of us process and have a different memory of what took place. So for me, when she did tell us, she sat us down and told us she had cancer. And Donna asked her, "Is that something that you can die from?" And she told her no. She said, "No, I'm not going to die from it." So Donna was just like, "Okay." And so we just took it as, or at least I did. Okay, she said no. I'm not. She told Donna she's not going to die from it, and so that's how I took that. That's
Mhm.
why I think that I don't even think, I know that's why I prayed so, really trusting and believing that she was going to be healed because she said she would not die from it. So, like Patricia said, it was some years later for her to process or to even experience grief. Mine's was a little bit earlier on, and I remember it vividly, sitting outside, dark, looking up, and just tears coming down and saying, "Mama, I miss you so bad. I miss you so bad." And just crying uncontrollably because we were told not to at the services. So that was
Mhm.
my time to be able to do that. And just feeling arms wrapped around me, and just a peace came over me like I've never experienced before. And so that was one of my first moments of grief.
Hmm. And I assume those arms were the arms of the Father, huh?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So so that part, right? And that's really what we want people to get is that grief is hard. Mourning is hard. It's not easy and it may never go away. It may never go away. People say, "Oh, you'll get through it or you'll get past it." It might never. But there's a Father in heaven who sees you, who sees your tears, who sees that your heart is broken. And if you just let him, he will put his arms around you and he will comfort you. And there will be this peace that you can't even explain. At such a young age, you felt the peace of God. And my goal is to try to be there all the time. So not so that I don't feel pain, because I do welcome it, because I know that there's growth in the process of going through pain and going through grieving. So just kind of piggybacking off of what you said, that the arms of our Father, just, I got you. I know you miss her, but I got you and I love you and everything's going to be okay. He will do that for you. So the question for you too, when your father went to be with the Lord and knowing that you had had that experience where you felt the Father's arms around you, um, not that the loss is any easier, but were you able to stand more firm in knowing that God would wrap his arms around you again if he did it once? So how was that for you?
Right, right. So with my dad, yes, like Patricia had mentioned, we were more hands-on right
Mhm.
there, really going through the transitioning with him. And so at that time, I had a family. I was married, I had children. And
Mhm.
so, yes, the grief was there. But because I knew now, at that time, where he was at and that he was at peace, it was much different. I don't want to use the word easier
Right.
because easy really is not even a word to be used in conjunction with grief,
Right.
but it was different. I was able to go in and do the hair, dye his hair, make him up and everything. And it was like at that time, I felt like this is just a shell. This isn't him, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But then after he was dressed and the body was laying in the casket, and I was with my brother Ozell, and we walk up to the casket, that's when I broke down.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that was the trigger to seeing that, hey, this is final. This is just a shell, and he's no longer there. And this is final here on this side.
Yeah.
So that moment, just, the visual
Yeah.
triggered the grief.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We were talking earlier. I'm gonna let the viewers hear in a little something. We were talking earlier about how last week we talked about how grief and mourning are different. And that grief is kind of that response to the loss, right? And she mentioned that, the viewing of that shell, that body, that was the trigger for her that this is final. And that grief sunk in, right? She hadn't even begun the process of mourning yet. She's still in grief. She's still in absolute grief. And as I'm sure, and you can pop in, but as you've gone through your life, there are moments of grief for both your mother and your father at times, still to this day. Would that be true?
Oh, for sure. I still dream about them. I still dream about them and my siblings that have gone on. But since we're parents, I still dream about them, and the dreams would be horrific because that's what was still, in my memory, that it was a horrific thing, that it was
Mhm.
something very catastrophic being torn away from me. Even though I might not have, verbalized it that way in my consciousness, but in my subconsciousness or in my sleeping time, that's what would come forth. Only recently, and I mean very recently, maybe within the last, I'd say maybe a year, 6 months,
Mhm.
when they are in my dreams now, they're healthy, they're whole, there's laughter, there's joy, they're young. They were
Wow.
both young when they did pass, but so that now I don't miss them that way anymore. I
Mm.
don't miss them like, I still need you here with me. No, I have a remembrance of the joy that I had with them while they were here, and that what I will experience again with them, just in a different place. So,
Well, that was wonderful. That's beautiful. And that is like a perfect segue into, kind of my next thing. You mentioned you now see them and it's joyful.
mm,
It's joyful. And you're still mourning your parents. They're not here.
right.
And there are times you still want to, oh, I wish I could, oh, I would love to. I wonder what mom or daddy would think about that. That is mourning, but she's now got joy in it, and that her dreams are joyful and they're peaceful and they're whole. And you, we can all have that. That kind of peace comes from God and God only. And it's not, what do I have enough faith or am I strong enough? No, it's none of that. It's just press into him, draw near to him, and he'll draw near to you. Doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, but he'll certainly draw near to you and help you out. So we got about 6 minutes left. I know there's like, I don't know, Auntie Trish, there are like 6, 7 people on, I think, or something like that. Just wanted
Yes.
to give the audience an opportunity to see if they have any questions or, for Brenda or Patricia or me. And we'll give them about a minute, Auntie? I
Yeah,
got 2
that
aunties
sounds
on.
good.
Yeah, they can actually put it in the chat if
Yeah, type
there's
that into the chat.
yeah, if there's something you would like to share, or if there was something that resonated with you from what was discussed, just kind of put it in the comments in the chat. And while we're waiting on that, you know, I like the fact that you were talking about, Brenda, how you would have the nightmares. And that's what I was talking about, is there was a constant nightmare of this illusion that I created, you know, that that's how I was going to die. I don't want to die. There was that fear that was always, you know, chasing after you. And it wasn't until same thing where I was just like, God, take this away. This is, you know, like, this is not you. You wouldn't want me to live in this kind of fear. And at that time, I think I was 30 years old. And I'm going to answer this question. When I was 30 years old, that I seen them whole. And what I was looking for was acceptance from them that I didn't get when they were living, even though they didn't have to verbalize it, but there was that emptiness of being accepted. And at that point in my life is when I was able to see them whole. And so Sean is asking, what is it like for you, or, oh, wait a minute. What was it like for you losing Nani versus losing Dad? I know you talked about a little last time, but can you expound?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's from Sean. What was losing your Nani, or losing Nani, your mother, versus losing your dad? And he said, I know you talked a little bit about that last time, but can you expound? That's directed towards you, Felicia. Good question.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I think for me, for my mom, I was ready. I knew it was coming. But I wasn't ready because, to your point, I had a lot of unresolved issues, a lot of things that I thought I had gotten through, but didn't. And so I mourned her. I grieved her. I don't want to say mourn. I grieved her for almost 5 years. Um, and it was literally, it was tough. It was tough, and I knew God was there, but one thing I hadn't done was I hadn't really stood on the promises of God. I knew what he said, and I knew what his word said, but I hadn't really stood in that and understood that in his sovereignty. I mean, I was being selfish, right? But in his sovereignty, he had a plan and he knew everything from the end to the beginning. And so I didn't really understand that, and I hadn't grasped that. Um, I can't really talk about the loss of my dad because for me, it's unfortunate, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And so my grief was more for my brothers and sisters than it was I didn't feel a personal loss. Um, I grieved for my brothers and sisters. My mom was completely different. I grieved for myself. I grieved for my brother. We share a mom. We have the same mom. But then losing my grandfather, their father, who was much like my dad, I didn't realize until I was probably 37 years old that I had this god awful fear of dying when I was 40. You know, and I held on to that up until the time I turned 40. And I was like, wait a minute, where did I get this thought from? It came from me losing my grandfather and my grandmother at such an early age. I just thought I was going to die early. So, you know, dealing with my mom's loss was a lot harder. Um, I made it a lot harder on myself than it had to be. There were moments that I had someone there in Christ to comfort me, and I didn't run that way. And so it's changed a lot, and I go to him for everything. Doesn't mean it's easier, but it certainly was. My tears did not last as long, my continuous tears. I have tears every now and then, but my continuous tears did not last long. And I'm grateful for that. So good question.
And I like that what you brought out too, real quick, Felicia, when you said you always had this in the back of your mind that you were going to die early. I think we all were experiencing that. And it's something that you said 40. And then with my grandfather, I mean, with my dad, your grandfather. And it's funny because my mom died at 40, but it was the impact of my father's death that stuck with you. And the number 40, you somehow, and that's what I'm saying, how our memories and things and how we process things, we can intertwine them and make them into something that really is not, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Miss Brenda Gray, for being on today. Patricia McCoy, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Don't forget to click subscribe and share this with someone. We'll be back this time next week, 7:30. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Love you guys.